Did I say that the last video was the end of the lesson? Of course it isn't. Here's part 2 on types of sampling. So let's imagine that we wanted to conduct a survey across the UK on whether left-handedness has any relationship with IQ. We're going to need some people to assess, but we don't know the sampling frame. I don't have a list of all the left-handed people and the non-left-handed people in the UK, so that's going to be a bit tricky. So we can't do our random sampling or whatever with our sampling frame. So we have two versions of non-random sampling to look at. The first one is called quota sampling, okay, and it has some similarities with stratified sampling in that we're going to divide our population into groups. So, as it says in the first black box, for this scenario we'd likely use quota sampling, i.e. number 1. As with stratified sampling, we divide the population into groups according to characteristic of interest, then determine the size of each group in the sample to reflect proportions within the population. So, if 10% of people were left-handed and 90% were right-handed, we would then want our sample to reflect the fact that 10% are left-handed, etc. But instead of random sampling within each group, we actively choose people within each group and via suitable means, for example, advertising, until the quota for each group is filled. Okay, we can't use a sampling frame to select people. Okay, we just have to find another way of collecting enough people to fill whatever size our sample size is. As it says in the second black box, a variant of this is opportunity sampling, okay, where we find people at the same time the survey is being carried out. Now, the main difference between quota sampling and opportunity sampling is that quota sampling involves strata again, like stratified sampling, but opportunity sampling doesn't. You simply wait at the entrance to a railway station or the exit to a railway station, and you just ask people as they walk past. Okay, so for example, it gives exit polls at polling stations. Okay, so you can't go around to every polling station and do a random sample of all the people who are going in and out. So what they will do is they will stand at the exit of the polling station, and as people walk out, they'll ask them if they're happy to divulge who they voted for. This is not a suitable method for the left-handed example because, given the likely time-consuming nature of assessment coupled with resources required, we'd likely arrange with the people taking part before the actual assessment tasks took place. So they're basically saying you can't just wait outside a railway station and ask the first 10 people you see, because you need to plan in advance. That's what they're saying. So back to our handouts, let's have a look at the two types of non-random sampling and how we carry them out and what the advantages and disadvantages are. So for quota sampling, what is it? You divide the population into groups according to a characteristic. A quota of items / people in each group is set to try and reflect the group's proportion in the whole population, but the interviewer is selecting the actual sampling unit. So whereas in the random sampling, we were using a random number generator or a hat to determine which sampling units we picked, in this case, quota sampling, it's the interviewer actually choosing the people. Okay, the advantages are that it allows a small sample to still be representative of the population. We don't need a sampling frame. It's quick, easy, and expensive, and it allows for easy comparison between the different groups in the population. However, as we know, okay, we can get bias if we're not doing it completely randomly. So non-random sampling can introduce bias. We've got to divide the population into groups, which could be costly, could even be inaccurate if we don't know what we do. Okay, or people, whatever. Increasing the scope of study increases the number of groups, adding time and expense. So the more accurate you want your results, the more expensive and more time consuming it's going to be. And non-responses are not recorded. I mean, you could record them. Okay, so if you were, again, let's say you were standing outside a polling station and you asked the first 50 people who they voted for, and 35 of them tell you who they voted for and 15 don't, you could record that 15 people didn't say. But according to this, the disadvantage of quota sampling is that some people, you may not write it down if they say that. Coming on to opportunity, again, convenience, I've never heard anyone call it that, opportunity sampling. How you do it is you simply take a sample from the people who are available at the time of study, who meet the criteria. Okay, now it's easy to carry out and it's inexpensive because you're literally just standing around choosing the first 10 people or whatever. Okay, but it's unlikely to provide a representative sample and it's highly dependent on the individual researcher. Okay, I don't know what to say about that last one. But let's just imagine again that we're going back to the exit to a train station. Okay, let's say we're interested in people's train travel, okay, and how much they spend per week. Okay, if we're looking for an average across the country, then standing outside a train station, collecting people who have definitely just got there by train is obviously going to bias it because you're not including all the people who never use the train. As for random sampling, we're going to have a look at an exam question. So we've got a lake which contains 3 species of fish. Okay, as soon as I see fish, I'm thinking I can't possibly have a sampling frame of fish because I don't know how many fish there are in the lake. Even if I put them in the lake in the first place, some may have died, some may have given birth. So I don't actually know, unless I dredge the lake and essentially kill all the fish, I do not know exactly how many fish there are. And I don't know how many, say, koi carp or trout or whatever it is. So I can't divide it into strata in the same way that I would like to for random sampling. But of course, I would potentially like to put it into strata, in which case, if I can't do it with a sampling frame, I can't do it with random sampling, I'm going to be using quota sampling because that still involves groups. So I've only read one sentence, let's carry on. There are estimated to be 1,400 trout, 600 bass, and 450 pike in the lake. Okay, so that's jumping out at me that I want to put them into groups, but I know that I can't use stratified sampling because I haven't got a sampling frame. You might say, well, you know, there are 1,400 trout. Well, no, it's estimated that there are 1,400 trout and estimated there are 600 bass, etc. We don't actually know and we can't make a list. A survey of the health of the fish in the lake is carried out. So if we dredge the lake and kill them all, that's not going to be very good, is it? And a sample of 30 fish is chosen. Part A, give a reason why stratified random sampling cannot be used. Okay, I've already said that's basically because we want to use strata, but we haven't got a sampling frame. Part B, state an appropriate sampling method for the survey. So if you can't do stratified sampling, you're going to have to choose one of your non-random methods and quota, still divides them into groups. So that's what I would go for. Given advantage and disadvantage of this sampling method, well, we've already seen that on the previous slide. You've got it written down. And then part D, explain how this sampling method could be used to select the sample of 30 fish. You must show you're working. Now notice the mark distribution. We had 1, 1, 2 for the first 3 questions, and then 4 marks, the same as the total for the rest of the question for part D. So this is really where they want us to explain what we're doing. So we'll have a look at the answer in a minute, but if I was answering this question about quota sampling, it would be something along the line as follows. So if I add up 1,400, 600, and 450, that is 2,450. I want to sample 30, so I would divide 30 by 2,450 to find out exactly how many that is. As I can't see the answers, I'm just going to do that calculation live. So what we're saying, 30 divided by 2,450 is 3/245. Not a particularly nice fraction, it's just cross the zeros off. So that means that I want 3 245ths of the trout, 3 245ths of the bass, and 3 245ths of the pike. So let's imagine that we cast our rod into the, oh, sorry, I need to work that out. So if I times that, let's say I'll just go for the pike because there's fewer of them. So I've times 3 245ths by 450. It's 270/49, which is, 5.5. It was never going to be a whole number, but 5.5, it's 5.51. So I'm going to hedge my bets and round that up to 6 rather than down to 5. So I want to catch 6 pike. So let's say I put my rod in the water and I get a trout. Okay, I can tick one off on the trout list, but that's not a pike. Okay, let's say the next 4 are pike, just to speed this process up. Okay, I've picked off or ticked off 4 pike. The next 3 fish are bass. The next one's a trout. I get another pike, so I'm now up to 5. Okay, I'm aiming for 6. I collect another trout. I collect another bass. I collect another pike. I've got 6. Okay, I've got what I wanted, but I haven't necessarily got all the trout and bass I want, so I've got to carry on fishing. The next 3 are trout. The next 2 after that are bass. The next one's a pike. I don't want to include that pike. I've already got 6, so I will discard and ignore any further pike that I get until I have completed the numbers for the trout and the bass. Okay, and of course it could be that the pike come out slower, so because there's fewer of them. So that's what I do. I catch the number of fish I want in my sample for each type, and then if I catch any extra fish of that particular type, I just discard their information. So let's see what the answer actually says. Okay, so looking at the answers, part A, they've acknowledged the fact that there's no possibility of a sampling frame, so that's why we can't use stratified sampling, which is a random sampling method requiring a sampling frame. Part B, quota sampling. So yes, if you want your groups or your strata, then the only one out of non-random sampling you're going to pick will be the quota sampling. For part C, we wanted one advantage and one disadvantage. They've given us 3 possibilities, and I imagine there will be others. So advantages of a quota sample: it can be obtained quickly, costs are kept to a minimum. They like to talk about time and cost. Administration of survey is easy. So yes, basically, it's not time consuming, it's cheap, and it's easy to do. They're basically the three main advantages of anything quick. The disadvantages: well, it's not possible to estimate sampling errors. Okay, well, fair enough. I wouldn't have written that myself. I suppose, yes, there will be errors in the sampling because it's not completely accurate. That's all they're really saying, because it's not random. The process is not random. That's the next thing they said. The reason the process isn't random, you might say, well, you know, you're going to collect 6 pike, you know, they might as well be random. But let's say that I'm fishing in a traditional way with some baits on the end of my rod. Okay, and it's the big pike that are more aggressive to the little pike who get the food and hence get caught. So I might end up collecting 6 large pike without, you know, any intention of doing so. And the surveyor may not be able to identify species of fish easily. I mean, if you are doing a survey of, you know, fish, then you would hope you would actually choose someone who can tell them apart. But they've gone down the incompetence angle. I mean, I couldn't tell them apart, but then I'm trying to do a survey of fish. Anyway, part D, the 4 marker. So they have acknowledged the fact that the sample size is 30. They haven't done exactly what I did, because I worked out the total and divided it and got a fraction. But they basically said, since there are 2,450 fish in total, the fraction of trout we want is 1,400 divided by 2,450, and then we times that by 30 to work out the number of trout. So that is about 17 for bass, 7, and for the pike, as I say, I rounded up to 6, like they have said underneath. It's a good idea at this point to actually check that your numbers add up to 30. Okay, and 17, 7, and 6 do add up to 30. So they presumably wrote this question to make sure they actually added up to the right amount. But in theory, in reality, it can sometimes be that you're one either way because of the way the numbers round. And then finally, if a fish is caught and the species quota is full, then this is ignored. Exactly what I said. So you need that for the final 4th mark. We're going to finish this second video with a little game called Name That Sampling Methods. So these are 3 that have been produced by Dr. Frost, and I've written 6 of my own. So we can see the 5 different sampling methods at the top. The first 3 are random, the second 2 are not random. And of those, we've been asked to suggest a suitable sampling method for 3 different scenarios. The first one is wishing to test light bulbs produced by a factory in a daily batch. I would like to do that randomly. I don't think there's any point putting them into strata, because I wouldn't know what the strata are. So given a choice between simple, random, and systematic, I'd probably go for systematic, because then I can take every 10th light bulb off or whatever it might be. Let's find out the answer to it. You wish to survey consumer opinion on your new drink Fizzguzz, released in the UK. Well, we haven't got a sampling frame of all the people in the UK. I can't really put them into strata, so I think I'm probably just going to go for opportunity sampling. I'm going to go out on the streets with a bench and some bottles of Fizzguzz and some cups, and I'm going to just ask random people as they walk past if they would like to try. So we've got systematic for the first one, opportunity for the second one, and then finally, you wish to determine students' favourite TV programmes in your school that is fairly representative of each year group. So that last clause there, fairly representative of each year group, is implying stratified sampling. We can get a sampling unit because we can use the school register, so we don't have to go down the line of quota sampling. So my answers would be systematic, opportunity, and stratified. So they agree with me for the first one, systematic sampling. They've gone for quota or opportunity for the second one. Okay, but I personally go for, I can't see the quote. I mean, I suppose I could do a quota. I could try and take random people walking around and divide them into, I don't know, men and women or whatever, but opportunity sampling would seem the most realistic of the 2 options. And then the final one is stratified. I'm not going to read all the words. You can pause the video if you wish. Okay, and then finally 6 more scenarios which I have written myself. I would like you to pause the video and look at each of the 6 and discuss it with each other, which sampling method you think would be most appropriate. I'll see you in video 3.